All right, today we are breaking down a really huge decision in the world of mental health treatment. After years of promising research, MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD has hit a massive roadblock, and we've got the inside scoop straight from the source. And it all comes down to this one document. This is the FDA's complete response letter sent to Lykos Therapeutics, and inside is the official verdict that so many people were waiting for. And that verdict? A firm no. The application to approve MDMA was flat out rejected. So you gotta ask what happened, and maybe more importantly, why. Okay, let's dive right into it. Here's what we're gonna cover. We're gonna break down the FDA's reasoning piece by piece. We'll look at the flawed data, big questions about long-term effects, some serious trial bias, and what the agency is actually demanding for any path forward. So first, let's really get our heads around the core conclusion the FDA came to. This wasn't just about one little mistake. It was a fundamental problem with the evidence they were given. The agency was, incredibly clear. They said the application failed on two major fronts. It didn't prove the drug was safe, and it didn't prove it was effective. The letter then zeroed in on three main issues that basically stopped the whole approval process right in its tracks. Okay, so the first major red flag the FDA saw was all about how the safety of the drug was tracked and reported. Now, this gets a little bit into the weeds, but trust me, it's absolutely crucial to understanding the whole story. Now check this out, because this is where it gets really interesting. You've got this direct contradiction right here. On the left, the official study protocol uses a super broad definition for side effects, what they call adverse events. But then, look at the right. The training manual that was actually given to the staff told them to specifically exclude any positive or favorable effects. So why is this such a big deal? Well, by telling staff to just ignore positive effects, like, say, euphoria, the FDA argued that some really critical data about the drug's potential for abuse was never even collected. To figure out if a drug is safe, the agency has to know about all the effects, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And in this case, a whole chunk of that data was systematically just left out. So let's move on to the second major issue, and you can start to see how these problems build on each other. This one is all about a simple question. How long do the therapy's benefits actually last? You see, the FDA has to know if a treatment is just a temporary fix or if it's a real long-term solution. For chronic illness like PTSD, showing what they call a durable treatment effect is absolutely critical. The therapy was pretty short, just 3 sessions, so understanding what happens months or even years down the road is essential. So there was a follow-up study called MPL-Long that was supposed to answer this question, but the FDA found it was just full of holes. There's only one follow-up visit, and it happened at wildly different times. Some people came back after 6 months, others after 2 years. And because participants could choose whether or not to enroll, there was a huge risk of self-selection bias. Think about it. The people who felt better might have been way more likely to come back. All this left that crucial question of long-term effectiveness completely unanswered. Okay, on to the third critical flaw the FDA pointed out. And this one is all about who was in these studies and maybe what they already knew about the drug. Get ready for this number. 40%. That's a huge number. That's the percentage of people in the trial who said they had used MDMA before the study even started. And this chart just brilliantly illustrates the problem, doesn't it? That 40% figure is roughly double what you'd expect to see based on national surveys of people with PTSD. The FDA was really worried that this just wasn't a representative group of people. This creates a massive potential for something called expectation bias. The FDA worried the people with prior experience could easily tell if they'd gotten the real drug or just a placebo. They call this functional unblinding, and it's a huge problem because it can completely skew the results and make the treatment look way more effective than it actually is. So look, the crucial point here isn't just about what went wrong. It's about what the FDA says needs to happen next if this therapy is ever going to be considered for approval. The agency basically laid out a super clear roadmap. They said, any new trial has to prove the effects are durable with a proper blinded long-term follow-up. It has to minimize bias, probably by limiting who can join based on prior use. And crucially, it has to go back and capture all the side effects, positive and negative, to get a true picture of the drug's safety. But believe it or not, it doesn't even stop with those 3 main issues. Beyond those big picture problems, the FDA's letter revealed a long laundry list of other missing data points.
I mean, just look at this list. The application was missing a dedicated cardiac safety study. It needed more liver function data, studies on how MDMA interacts with common antidepressants, and so much more. This huge list really underscores just how incredibly complex and thorough the modern drug approval process is here in the United States.
And ultimately, this decision shines a huge spotlight on a fundamental challenge. The FDA's job is to evaluate drugs based on objective, quantifiable data, hard numbers. But psychedelic medicine, by its very nature, involves deeply subjective and personal experiences. So this rejection forces a really critical question. How can this new frontier of medicine ever meet the rigorous, evidence-based standards of modern drug regulation? It's a puzzle that researchers are now going to have to solve.